Why is trust such a pivotal element of good leadership? We'll find out today when I speak with leadership expert, trainer, and author Carolyn Rowan. That's coming up in this video. Hello everyone, I'm pleased to have with me Carolyn Rowan, and I'm pleased to talk to Carolyn today about leadership and specifically about trust. So before we start, maybe Carolyn, tell us what you do.
Thank you, Stephen. I work with organizations, leaders in organizations, helping them to actually develop skills to be better leaders, how they communicate, how they work, how they build trust with people within their organizations, so ultimately we'll get better results for them.
How important then is trust from your perspective in creating a high-performance organization?
Trust is one of those things that can change the culture, and through that build relationships and get the results that people are looking for. So without trust, you are not going to get teams working together. You're not going to get people working together. You're not going to get the best performance from people. Mm-hmm. So working on how you develop trust in an organization is absolutely critical in my opinion.
Okay, now you talk about getting people to work together, building teams. What about trust between, just the leader and his management team or the people that report to him directly? How is that so important, and why is it so important in terms of the leader getting what he wants from people and people getting what they need from the leader to perform?
When people trust the leader, they will work harder, there's positive morale in the area, they will be collaborative, they'll make suggestions, they'll be open, they'll leverage their strengths. When there is low trust, we get people who withdraw, who potentially hide mistakes, don't do the things that they really need to do to move organizations forward.
So trust, you also spoke about the culture of the company, and of course, the management style or the leaders create the culture. So is that where trust begins in an organization?
Absolutely. The trust of any organization starts at the top. So whether you're talking the organization as a whole or you're talking of one manager and their team, it starts with the senior person in that team that must provide an environment that establishes trust between people. Mm-hmm. It's an important part of how we get people, and some of the key things in that element, and there's lots of things that create trust in an organization, like keeping commitments and being honest and open and all of these things. But two of the things that I think are very important in creating trust in an organization is one, the managers or the leaders' peace, whether they come together with people with peace in their heart and thinking in a peaceful manner. And we can talk a little bit more about that. Yeah. The other thing is talking about the conversations we have with people and what level of conversation we have it, and whether those conversations create trust or whether they're just conversations. They don't actually create and generate that trust. Mm-hmm. So those to me are two very important things that I think are often missed in organizations that create that trusting environment.
Yeah, and that's really was on, your article. I really liked it because you don't go into a lot of fluff. You really get to the tips, the points. What does a leader need to do to develop trust? And what I really liked and caught my attention was the fact about peace, about the leader coming from a place of peace. And that was the number one thing on your list. So it's kind of like, I guess, the foundation for all the other tips to be able to be put into place. You have to start from that place of peace. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely. And by peace, this is a fundamental thing that really goes on, is when we have interactions with people, what's going on in our head? Are we at peace and looking to get to win-win, are looking to resolve issues, are looking to develop people, are looking to support people? Are we looking at people as people, or are we looking at people as objects? Do we have peace? We all have a certain amount of values, things we say we value. Companies have credos, departments can have credos, you can have all of those things. You read them, you look at them, you say, yes, they're very important, they're key. So when we honor those things, we're coming from a place of peace. When we are coming from a place of rejection of those and, not really a peaceful place, we deal with people differently. And we go from what I would call, from a standpoint of being I-centric, which is all about me. What we need to do is get people to be we-centric. It's about us as a team. But if we're in our head and thinking about just us, and we're not peaceful, and we're sort of blaming others or looking at people in different ways, then we're not at peace. And unless we're at peace when we come to it and say, how do I make this win-win? Then we're not going to get that synergy that we're looking for, and we're not going to build that high trust.
Right. And, people could listen to what you're saying, and, it could also almost be translated like a technique. Okay, how can I be them-centric instead of me? But I think it's more than that. It's comes from an understanding, comes from an experience, a realization that, this is the kind of experience I want to create for myself and for the other person. It's not just a technique that I can apply to get the person to do what I want. Is that...
Absolutely not. And that interesting enough, falls into the types of conversations we have with people. So if you think about having conversations that build trust. So we have lots of different types of conversations. So if we have a conversation that potentially is a transactional type of conversation, there's an asking, there's a telling, I'm just giving information, it's an information flow. Good stuff to do, doesn't necessarily build trust or doesn't build trust, it just is. There's the other conversations. The second sort of conversation is a positional type of conversation that we have, which is sort of an inquiring advocate type of conversation. So I'm interested in knowing what you believe, and I want to share what I believe with you. But I'm not necessarily at peace, because through that conversation, I am trying to find out what you believe so I can persuade you to come over to my side.
Right.
That I want you to believe in me. It's almost manipulative.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was alluding to, right. And that's when it just comes from wanting to use a technique rather than coming from a sincere place of building a relationship. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, in this process, we have asking questions, which is a key part of it. What sort of questions do we ask? Mm-hmm. So, is this red? Is a very basic question. This gets a bit more, help me to what you feel here. What are you believing here? But then it gets into the listening piece of it. And the listening piece is, at what level am I listening? So in the positioning type of conversation, I'm going to be listening actively. Active listening is where I hear what you say. I don't necessarily believe it, understand it, go with it, or have feelings about it, but I do understand what you said in order for me to almost manipulate you into what I want you to do. Right. So it's a bit coercive.
Yeah.
The next level that takes us to where, and there's little bits of trust that might be built in there, but not a whole pile. If we really want trusting relationships, we need to bring it to the next level, which is really the transformational level, where we share, we discover, and we listen at a different level. We listen with emotion, we listen with empathy, we listen with an open mind. Yeah. We're there to not only hear what people say, we're there to understand what they say from their perspective. Doesn't say we have to agree with it, but we do need to understand it from their perspective.
We need to value other people's perspective.
Sorry?
Right? We need to value the other person's perspective, even if we don't agree with it, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then we need to have an open mind. And the open mind is such that we go, I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm now understanding it. I'm going to process whether that adds value to where I was coming from, because it's a different perspective. And I need to have an open mind to say, in actual fact, what you're talking about, what you're saying, or the ideas that you're suggesting actually have value They can either be meld with what I'm thinking, or maybe I need to totally change my thinking. But when you get leaders who are not willing to be open-minded or really share or really listen, we're going to not build the trust.
Right.
And as we said earlier, no building trust, we do not generate the relationships that we really want.
Yeah. Now, just a side note here about trust. There was an article by, I guess, one of your colleagues, Kit Silcox, in organizational development, but it also was about trust. Trust builds a strong structure. And he quoted from Stephen Covey, who says that organizations with high trust outperforms those with low trust by 600%. That's a huge figure. So let's put some facts behind what we're saying.
Absolutely. And you think, it's interesting. Stephen Covey's son has written a book.
Oh, really?
The something of trust. I can't remember the full title,
Right.
but anyway, he's one, and he was managing and doing deals with organizations. And he was working with an organization who went in and they made an acquisition based on a handshake.
Okay.
And they hadn't got all the data, they hadn't got all the things, but there was such high trust in there. And these are major corporations that could do it on a handshake.
Yeah.
That's the level of trust that we should be developing.
A handshake until the lawyers get in there.
Well, no,
Have a field day.
they didn't involve lawyers.
Oh, really?
Other than having a final written contract.
Yeah.
But they didn't get into the negotiation with lawyers. They'd already agreed upon it.
Yeah, that's rare these days.
It's an amazing story.
Yeah. Now, there's another thing that came to my attention just after I read your article and we arranged this interview was this article in the local business weekly in French, Les Affaires. And this is the picture on the cover of, I have to read his name because I can't remember it, Chade Meng Tan, who is the chief of meditation at Google. And I found this, there's a whole 2-page article about him. And he started off as an engineer at Google, but throughout his, I guess, career there was, well, discovering for himself the importance of personal well-being, of peace, and of meditation. And that's become something that Google has embraced, and they actually, or he has developed a training program for this, for the employees of Google, but also they delivering this to other organizations as well. So, we all respect Google and follow them and see what they've achieved. When an organization like this is implementing this type of an approach, there has to be merit behind it. So it brings me to the question, Google's obviously being very practical, allowing this person or embracing his approach. How do you recommend that leaders start developing this ability to come from a peaceful place in order to start building stronger, trustful relationships with people? Because leaders are very stressed, especially small, medium-sized business owners. They often wear many hats. They're very stressed, a lot of business decisions. So what are your recommendations for that, since that's the pillar of your first tip?
Well, I think if you think about, we have stressors and symptoms of stress.
Right.
So meditation is one of the things that starts to get rid of some of the symptoms of stress.
Right.
So I think there's two things that we need to look at is what are the stressors? What are the things that are causing me stress in my life? And what can I do to manage that? And so sometimes thinking about, what are we focusing on? What our priorities are? What are the things that we do? Are we managing our time effectively? Are we allowing oodles of interruptions when we could manage it more effectively? So, and that's, some of the things that we do in like the results-centered leadership program and things, helping people to see that and get rid of stressors. The meditation side is getting rid of the symptom of stress, which says that's one of the ways to do it is to relax and to come from a place from peace, to take some time for planning, to take some time to calm down. And meditation one side, exercise might be the other for other people. But I think meditation and having some quiet time is important, because I think lots of people, they get up early and they jump in the car and they go to work and they're there at 7:30 and they're working and then they go home and then they go out with their kids and there's no time for them to be quiet.
The mind never sleeps if you allow it to never sleep. So you need to counteract that.
The other thing with peace, Stephen, that I think is important is before we react to something, before we communicate with somebody, before we ask questions, before we deal with things, planning is a key part of how we succeed.
Right.
So it's like 85% of our success comes from the planning we do. So if we would just spend a few minutes planning, thinking about what sort of a conversation do I want to have? I don't want to betray myself and my values by looking at people differently or treating them like objects or being the yelling, telling type of mode. Just a little bit of time to think and reflect and plan will, again, get huge results.
We both embrace goal setting. Maybe we can encourage people to set one goal from listening to this interview, and whether it be to start becoming a better listener or to start taking care of themselves from a peace perspective or inner peace, that would be something that maybe would be a step somebody listening to this can take.
Absolutely. And I think a key part of that would be helping people to look at what they do well, what they leverage, and thinking about a goal that complements leveraging their skills will help them move forward.
That's a very good point. Yeah, leverage your skills. Work from your strengths.
Exactly.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Carolyn. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're very busy to be on this call, and I'd look forward to doing this again and tackling other subjects with you in the future.
Excellent. Thanks. Nice talking to you.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Bye.